Welcome everyone who just joined and those who are hanging out from the last one. You'll be bored as you heard this before. Welcome everyone to Data Plus poster session. First time we've done it virtually. We're going to try to mimic poster sessions as best we can. So this group has actually got 3 slides. They're going to go over them quickly, about 5 minutes. And then just feel free to shout out questions, unmute yourself, put them in the chat while they're talking, whatever makes the most sense. And I'll facilitate discussion as we go. And this is actually our last session of the day, so we can even bleed a little bit over if we need. So go ahead.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to attend our presentation. My name is Monica. And we are with Project 26, the Retention of College Women in Tech. We'll start off by giving a brief overview of our client and our work. We are working with Rewriting the Code, or RTC, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to empowering a community of college women with a passion in technology by providing career opportunities, mentorship, and broader exposure. Supporting organizations like RTC is important because research shows that women feel more confident and comfortable in the workplace when they have connections with other women. These organizations also help alleviate the gender disparities in the tech industry by providing women with ample resources. So to support RTC's mission, our goal for these 10 weeks was to analyze their survey data in order to create these meaningful company profiles that the women of RTC can benefit from. This survey was distributed before the summer of 2020, which had questions regarding the women's experience in the recruitment process. We had a response rate of about, I think, 40 to 50% out of approximately 1,000 women. And the survey software that we used, which was Qualtrics, generated some preliminary findings, but we wanted to dedicate these 10 weeks to looking at how the relationships between these different questions and variables occurred. But before we could do this, we needed to do some extensive data tidying and wrangling. So our data set had 1,672 total observations and over 2,000 variables. And the sheer size of our data set became a very big challenge, along with its formatting issues that we had to overcome. We can elaborate more on this later with any questions that you may ask us so that we can clarify that. But so once our data set was cleaned, we were able to use linear regression and backwards elimination, along with summary statistics to find relationships with several variables. We also had time to do some text analysis in Python on a sample of 45 resumes to find some trends in these resumes of those women who were ultimately given an offer for the summer. So with all of this, we were able to create comprehensive profiles for Rewriting the Code. And while we couldn't really include all of our recommendations and analyses, we included some screenshots here that are samples here.
Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Grace. So one of the main goals of our project was to create these company profiles and industry profiles, which was addressed before. But an issue that we quickly ran into was that there just wasn't enough data for a lot of these companies to create profiles for. So we ended up sorting the companies based off the numbers of offers given, and we chose the top 15 companies and we created profiles for them. In order to compromise with not being able to create profiles for the other companies, we created these industry profiles, sorting them based off of sectors. So looking at the example company profile, we used Microsoft as an example, which had the highest amount of offers given. First, we looked at the interview rate and the offer rate, and for the most part, most of the interview rates fell within 15 to 30%, while the offer rate was around 10% or less. But in Microsoft's case, the offer rate was 19.2%, while the interview rate was 26.8%. We also looked at the proportion breakdown of applied, interviewed, and offer for schools that ranked in the top 25 CS programs and those outside this top 25 rank. Specifically, we wanted to see if schools in the top 25 rank would have an advantage in having a greater proportion of interviewed and offer, but for the most part, this wasn't the case. We also looked at the quality of the recruitment process, the ethnic breakdown of the total offers, the top 5 reasons for accepting an offer, the top 5 benefits offered, and the job position based off of those who received an offer. And overwhelmingly, software engineer was the most popular. Next, we're going to look at a sample industry profile. And we use the tech industry as the example because it had the largest pool of applicants. So we first looked at the ethnic breakdown of the interview process because we want to see if a specific ethnicity would have an advantage in having a greater proportion of interviewed and offer as opposed to another ethnicity. But overall, there wasn't really a predominant trend. And then we also looked at the negotiation success rate, and in the tech industry, it was 58.6%. This negotiation success rate was calculated based off of those who attempted a negotiation and in return received a higher salary, more benefits, or both. For the most part, this negotiation success rate varied greatly from industry to industry. So as our 10 weeks of Data Plus approaches its end, there's still a lot that can be done with this project. First is to be able to build company profiles for all 76 companies. And in order to do this, we hope in future surveys, we can collect data for those companies that we weren't able to create profiles for. With more data, we can also create more industry profiles because originally when we were splitting up the industries, there were a lot of the smaller industries that just didn't have enough data. So we ended up combining a lot of the industries into more broad industries. And then finally, hope to connect some insights from the 2020 post-internship survey with our current analysis so we can expand these profiles beyond just the recruitment process. So finally, we would like to end off with some acknowledgements. So first, we would like to thank the Rewriting the Code organization and especially Sue and Jade for providing us with the opportunity to analyze the survey data for our project this summer. We also like to thank Dr. Alexandra Cooper for her assistance in cleaning the data as well as leading the direction of the project. And finally, we'd like to especially thank Imari Smith, who has provided us the tremendous help and guidance throughout the past 10 weeks. Without her, our results wouldn't have been so successful, and achieving these results wouldn't have been done so smoothly and efficiently. So we like to thank her a lot. So please let us know that if you have any questions.
Thank you all. That was really great. Folks, you know the drill, put questions in the chat, unmute yourself, go as you will.
If anyone wants to see both either the company profile or the industry profile, just to see the numbers better, the other two slides are just those by themselves.
Donald, do you want to just unmute yourself and ask a question?
What kind of text analysis did you do with the resumes using Python?
Yeah, so the text analysis that we did mainly had to deal with, I guess, like formatting the PDF of the resumes that we had and then looking at different trends. Like we were basically just looking at some of the things, like we'll give examples of some of the things we looked at. We looked at like average GPA. We looked at some, what is it called, Grace, again, with the two, I think it was like buy tokens or something, where it's like you look at different phrases that are very popular and used in these sets of resumes. We also looked at the kind of words that people use. So like one trend that we found in these resumes of offers was that a lot of them were using descriptive adjectives and descriptive verbs instead of just like plain nouns and adverbs to really emphasize their, I guess, like their strengths. So it was just like, yeah, just looking at trends like that and just information. And and also we also looked at the popular coding languages that we had as well, that we found in those 45 resumes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Jun Yang asks, I was wondering if there's any way to tease out the effect of any self-selection from the survey. E.g., would stats be skewed for certain companies if people self-select to apply?
Could you, is it possible to clarify that question?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead, Jun, just unmute yourself if you can.
Yeah, thanks. Great presentation, and thank you for this survey and the study. So I was wondering if, well, you asked about the experience of applying and then the process of recruiting and interview at these companies, but what if, you know, people have made up their mind not to apply to certain companies and so on, right? So for example, one could interpret such high recruitment success of Microsoft as being that it's a small self-selected group of people who actually apply to Microsoft. That could be one explanation of why, you know, maybe certain ratios are higher. So I was wondering if there's any way to ask the question or design the survey in a way such that you can gauge the effect of this, right? So to,
Mhm.
because it's not like everybody applies to all the tech companies and then you will have a, you know, completely unbiased result.
Right. So like the format of our survey was basically people would list the companies that they applied to. So it wasn't just like one company that they talked about. There was like maybe a list of 5 companies. And then based on that list, the questions would be tailored towards that. So let's say a person applied to like 20 companies, they would have to pick their top 5. And then they would talk about their recruitment for each process or for each company. They would talk about salary, benefits, different aspects for each company. So in that way, we can have a more comprehensive look at what we're dealing with. Because like you said, yeah, that's a good point that self-selection could really skew it. But I guess the way the survey was designed, it was so that if you just got an offer from one company, you wouldn't be just addressing that. You could talk about several.
And then Amari Smith asked in the chat, any questions that you wanted to ask but could not due to data limitations?
One of them would definitely be like first generation versus those who aren't first generation. Unfortunately, we didn't have a large enough sample size to be able to fully analyze those who are who identifies first generation, which we had hoped to do so. Another thing would be those who apply to a company as an internship as opposed to a full-time offer. So we couldn't really differentiate then which pool was actually those as an internship versus those who are going for full-time. So that was kind of the unfortunate part of it, but we were still able to make use of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions or comments?
I have a question. Just wanted to tell the students if they did it.
Sorry, can you turn up your volume a little?
Sure. I said I don't have a question. Just wanted to tell you guys you did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you. We can also go ahead and like zoom in on company profiles if people would like that as well, because I know it's a little hard to see right now.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the sample company profile.
Yeah. And something interesting to point out is that a big question that I guess like a lot of our clients had was how does being in a top 25 versus not a top 25 school affect whether you get interviewed or offers from companies. And pretty much like you can see there's a very small difference by like a couple, like maybe like 50 people who received it in top 25 versus not top 25. So we found that throughout the companies and the industries, that number, there isn't really much discrepancy. I think there's a question in the chat.
Yeah, Amari Smith asks, what was your experience making findings accessible to non-data scientists?
I guess it was pretty interesting to try to, I guess, translate a lot of the analysis and a lot of the work that we had because, I mean, we don't have this included right now, but some of the stuff that we had is pretty stats heavy. And there's like a lot of jargon that like, I guess, not a lot of like people would be able to understand right off the bat. So trying to be able to make that more clear so that it's something that can be of use to the public was pretty interesting to do.
And then I think Nick had a question, which is, why did you all choose to highlight Microsoft?
We chose Microsoft just because it had the highest amount of offers given. That was just the main reason why.
Yeah, like we found a main limitation of our data set was that a lot of the companies that we wanted to look at had like very few data points or very few people who received offers or even applied to begin with. So it was important for us to find the right companies that did have enough people that received offers so that we could do enough analyses and our conclusions would be more sound.
Okay, we can move on to the industry profile for those who want to see that as well. This is only the parts of the industry profiles which the company profile did not have. So there are still other parts of the industry profile that's not included in this.
And you've got a question from Benjamin Chen. Were there any findings that you were not expecting?
I would say like an interesting finding, I think it's good that we have this industry profile up here, is actually the variation in negotiation success rate. We just wanted to look at how that would vary across industries. And here you can see that the negotiation success rate, which basically meant the number of women who tried to make a negotiation and had success in that their salary, benefits, or both were increased. Tech industry had the highest negotiation success rate, but we actually found that the finance industry had the least. I think it was around 18%. So like that was pretty interesting to think about. And I think that's also a good thing to keep in mind if you're trying to go for certain companies in an industry.
Another interesting thing that wasn't included in our poster presentation is we looked at the average number of applied versus average number of interviewed for all the ethnicities. And we found that unfortunately certain minority ethnicities would have a greater number of greater average number of applied, but then have a lesser average number of interviewed than some of the majority ethnicities, which is very sad to see.
Grace was fascinating. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Grace was fascinating to me. I was going to take that a step further because what's stunning is when you look at the percentages of people interviewed, they're not that different. But then when you look at the offers, there's where you see the disparity, right?
Yeah.
Which, do you all have any sense of, anything that you gathered that speaks to the cause of that other than what we know to be the cause? I mean, what we guess to be the cause, but do you have any sense from the data of our companies saying why that happens?
I think another potential reason is just confidence overall. A lot of the minority groups may not have as much confidence in themselves and in their resumes as opposed to a lot of majority groups, obviously because of like certain sentiments and just in the United States right now, or just in general about like race and ethnicity. So I think that might be a reason why. Another factor.
So I have one question, which is, and apologies if you covered this in the presentation, I missed it, but you're analyzing data from the survey that's handed to you. Are you involved that much in suggesting new survey questions or new survey design for what presumably is the next run?
Yeah, we did give some suggestions that we thought could help in future design as well as for those for future analysis for people. Yeah. One of the things that we did notice is we did have a post 2019 and post summer 2019 and pre-summer 2019 surveys, which is similar to the 2020, but obviously for 2019. And one of the things that kind of restricted us from being able to analyze that was just that some of the questions weren't consistent between the two surveys. So it's hard to connect them overall as analysis. So for in the future, that could be something to keep in mind. So the questions stay consistent.
Thank you, that's great. Melissa, do you want to just unmute yourself and ask that question?
Yeah, so just in response to your answer, why do you think that it's a confidence issue when it seems like there's almost, similar rates of applications from all ethnicities and just lower rates of offers?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. That was actually one of the recommendations and analyses that we had included in our ultimate company fact sheet, but we didn't really have room to include here. So there was a question in the survey that asks women, what are some factors contributing to doubt in your career in tech? And the most selected response was, I don't feel smart enough to do well in my major. And we saw that particular option was very, very popular among women. So we were able to kind of do some stats and see that very, option varied a lot among the minority groups. So so that's what the issue, and that's what we were able to kind of extrapolate from that. And one thing that rewriting the code is doing already is kind of having these separate, groups for the underrepresented, Black and Latina, so that the groups that don't feel like they can have that community, they're able to do so in the groups that the RTC has created.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
See, one question coming in. Imari, do you want to unmute yourself and ask that one?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm a proud PM asking questions. So I just wanted you all to talk about the survey sample versus the national sample of computer science majors. We talked a lot about sampling over the course of the project.
Yeah, so first we wanted to see if our sample, obviously we have a sample from RTC, but we wanted to see if that was really representative of the national data, just so if our analysis could be applicable to nationwide. But what we realized was that the proportion for Asian and Pacific Islander was around 13%, I believe, in the national data, while white, those identified as white was around 50% or more. But this was flipped within our RTC sample, as in our RTC sample, Asian, East Asian, Pacific Islander, and South Asian Indian combined was about 50%, while for white, it was around, I think, 15%. So these numbers obviously are flipped, which means that RTC sample may not be as representative as the national data, but or nationwide population, but our analysis is still really important to those the members of the RTC community.
So I'll ask the same question I asked the last group, which is, were there technical tools that you did not know how to use before this project began at all? And how do you feel about them now? Or did you know all the tools beforehand and it was just application?
Actually, I guess we would say that the text analysis was something that we did not know beforehand. We are very thankful that Imari was able to schedule a kind of workshop for us to be able to learn from someone else who has experience in this text analysis. And I would say that was very valuable. Grace, do you want to add on?
Yeah, definitely. The resumes were kind of something that we wanted to do just to be able to explore beyond just art. And we're really thankful that we were able to have the workshop with Devin, who Imari recommended, and just to be able to do something beyond just art and just a general and just do text analysis that neither of us had done before.
Cool. Yeah, I'll say that at this point in my life, the way I learn new tech tools is I realize in a panic I need to use them quickly. and I figure out someone to teach me them. So, and sometimes I reciprocate by teaching other people stuff, but I'm never sure if it's totally even. Other questions? I just want to flag if people want to, I think CS Plus and Code Plus have another session after this. I may be wrong. I think Data Plus is ending for today. But if people have a 3 o'clock, it's now 2:54. So.
I think Nick commented it's really crazy to see the difference between the ratio of interview rate to offered rate between white women and Latina women. Yeah, we would agree. It is crazy to see that. And it actually varies a lot between the industries and between the companies, which is also really crazy to think about.
Also mentioned just in general, when we were looking at the average number of interviewed versus applied versus interviewed, Hispanic and Latino was the group that had the smallest amount of who applied as well as those who received interviews back.
Mm-hmm.
So one question I have, and I don't know if tech industries do this, but I know that in like industries like Walmart or McDonald's or Waffle House, where they have like an HR step, they've done a lot where they have a kind of step where HR is reading your resume first. They've done a lot of studies on sort of obvious racial bias in just they put out, you know, you send in my resume with the name Paul on it, you send in my identical resume with the name Jamal on it, and you look at who gets called back and things like that. And the results are sort of really striking. But these are sort of after the callback. So in these cases, whenever you're doing interview versus callback, I assume it's a real live human actually interviews you and looks at your skills. It's not just HR. Well, HR humans do, but it's not just someone looking at your resume.
Yeah, offer is just basically anyone who has, I guess, like any stage of all the stages of interviews, and then they receive the offer back. So yeah, it would be beyond just the HR part.
Okay.
Yeah, we also have data about behavioral and technical interviews for these as well.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Paul, I have to run to another meeting, but thank you. You guys did a great job. Thank you very much. This was fun.
Thank you, Dean Ashby, for attending. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any closing questions or remarks? Well, Monica and Grace, I just want to say you did a great job. Real credit to Data Plus, and you know, please take some time off and or also go check in on some of the other groups. Thanks very much, everyone else, for attending. And as I said at the end of the other ones, the contact info for the students is on the website. So if you have questions you didn't get asked, please just reach out. And see you all later.
Thank you.
Thank you.